You are listening to Life's a Vacay podcast, a weekly podcast series focusing on living a life without limitations. I'm your host, Cha Jones. Each week, I interview purposeful people about what they do and how they do it. Some have traditional professions, while others have designed unconventional careers. But what matters most is that they all are living a life where business and pleasure never separate. Each day is a vacay. So let's get started. You are listening to Life's a Vacay podcast, a weekly podcast series focusing on living a life without limitations. I'm your host, Cha Jones. Each week, I interview purposeful people about what they do and how they do it. Some have traditional professions, while others have designed unconventional careers. But what matters most is that they all are living a life where business and pleasure never separate. Each day is a vacay. So let's get started. I would like to welcome my next guest, Adrianne Lewis. Adrianne is a semi-professional traveler and current nomad. Adrianne Lewis has travel experiences that span the entire globe, visiting 51 countries and all 7 continents so far. She's made a point to touch every part of the world. A few of her favorites were Antarctica, Iran, Thailand, Japan, Vietnam, and Mount Everest. No, she didn't climb, but she did make it a few days on base camp. Trek to see the mountain with her own eyes. The world is waiting. Y'all, please welcome to Life's a Vacay, Adrianne Lewis.
Hey, Adrianne, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I am absolutely wonderful. I'm excited to be interviewing you because when a mutual friend of ours suggested that you would be on the podcast, I got really excited because you out there seeing the world, girl.
Trying to.
You've been to 50 countries. That's correct.
Countries, yep.
All right. Tell us where you are right now.
I am in Osaka, Japan. I've been here since the 16th of November. So a little, was that 2 weeks? Almost? Yeah. 12 days, something like that. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm really enjoying Japan. It's very nice.
All right. Before we get into your travels, let's go back. How did you start traveling? When did you first fall in love with travel?
My father he worked for Southern Airways, which turned into Northwest Airways. And he just decided that we were always going to travel. So my first international country was the Grand Cayman, and I fell in love with leaving the country at that point. I was about 8 years old. But my first solo flight, I was 5 years old. I went from Nashville to Memphis, and I just remember crying the whole way. But it was pretty amazing that I was, back in the day, they just threw children on the airplane. Not like they do it now, it's such a big ordeal for unaccompanied minors. But, we were latchkey kids. I'm Gen X, so they didn't care what happens. That's, I think, along the way. But, I've just been in love with the whole process. TSA, I don't want to say TSA, but airport security gets me all energized because I know I'm going somewhere. So once I get through that, just walking through the terminal, seeing people, it's been that way for my whole life.
Okay, and so let's just establish something for the listeners. You are a graphic and web designer. That's what you do for a living. When did you establish your business?
2012, after being in corporate America for, 10 years, I decided it was time to strike out on my own.
So just a little over almost 12 years. And you are able to work anywhere, correct?
Anywhere. When we get off this call, I'll be working again.
Okay. So talk about the nomadic aspect of how you're living and working, and how do they kind of merge?
So this is a big trip for me. It's going to be until at least April or May of next year. So it's going to be a challenge because the zones difference is really big. Like it's 15 hours from my home time zone right now. So it's a challenge when you first get over here to get adjusted to the time change, because it took me 2 days of sleeping to finally get to the point where I could be awake during the day over here. So you have to kind of coordinate with clients, say, hey, between like 12 and 4 in the morning, I'd like to go to sleep, which is about 11 or 12 o'clock your time. So if you will just do me that solid and let me sleep for a little while, I can work the rest of the day. So it just depends on what kind of clients you have at the time, if they're going to be amendable to you doing that type of thing. But otherwise, it's not too bad. You just kind of move around and make it happen.
Okay. Now, this podcast obviously is called Life to Vacay. And, I tell people all the time, life being a vacay is really about you being able to merge your work with your play. And so it's kind of seamless. How are you able to do that?
Well, my web design team is in India. So when I'm in America, I moved them to work American hours, but they were working Indian hours at that time. And so we just kind of work around each other. It just works. I don't know how I make it work, but everybody, all the actors play a part, and they all play their roles very well, and we just make it happen every day.
All right. Now, you've been to 50 countries. You'll be in your 51st country, South Korea, next in a couple weeks, actually. So what sparked your interest and passion for this whole nomadic life that you're currently living?
I just realized there was more to living, and I hate to say it, it's more to living than America. And a lot of people don't get to experience that. The first time I actually moved out of the country was 2018. I was on vacation in Thailand. I had visited Thailand every year for about 5 years. And 2017, December, I just said, I don't want to go home. So I did have to go home because I had a ticket to go home, and I needed to, sell stuff and bring stuff back. So I bought a one-way ticket back to Thailand, and I said I would figure it out when I got here. And so I came back I think it was like January 18th or February 18th, something like that. And I found a job when I got there, because you have to have a job, have a work permit to stay legally in the country. I don't advocate doing border runs, but a lot of people do it that way. It just made it happen from there, and I fell in love with not being in America. It was actually a culture shock when I came back the first time. It was like a reverse culture shock. Like, oh my God, like what is going on in this country? I had gotten so used to being in Asia and doing things differently. And then when you come back to America, oddly enough, it seems so chaotic that it was disturbing at first. And a lot of people told me I would feel that way, but I didn't believe them. But yeah, it's interesting being out of the country for a long period of time and coming back.
Yeah, the repatriation is quite an experience. And if you don't really have it in check, you could feel like you're having a whole mental breakdown, because it's, when you think I'm going home. And I remember because I also lived in Korea. And so the first time I actually came back to the U.S., I was like, it was jarring because it started at the airport. Like, yo, I'm coming home. Can I get an introduction? I feel like I'm coming home. And I felt like I was going to hell.
Right. It's terrible. It really is terrible.
Yeah, because I landed in Chicago and they were not nice. So I was like, oh, can I get a break? So we the same. And that was like, move over here. Like, whoa, wow. She got attitude. I don't even know what your attitude is about. And it's like, is that your man? I was like, oh, okay, that's a lot. So yeah, I was like, yeah, we don't want to do this. We want to go home. Yeah, so I can imagine how that could be very jarring. All right, so is there a specific? I know that your first trip abroad was to the Grand Cayman, and then you had your first solo trip going to Memphis from Nashville, that's a really short trip, so that wasn't too bad at 5. But
right.
Is there a specific trip or experience that made you like, you know what, I'm off flights. the ground is not for me. Let's do this whole travel thing. Is there any specific thing that actually happened that just was like, I have to be out here seeing the world?
I don't know if it was one specific thing, but as I said earlier, it's just the rush of the whole process of leaving. And that's just been it for me. Like when I'm at home, I'm agitated most of the time because I'm trying to figure out when I can leave again. And so now this trip, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to even go home other than to re-up on clothes, because I'm probably going to have the same clothes on for 6 months, which is not going to be pleasant. I don't know. I don't know. I can't describe it.
Okay. So when you say home, where's home for you? How do you identify
Nashville,
home?
Tennessee. Yeah, Nashville, Tennessee is home in America.
All right. And that's changed. So I can imagine coming home, because like I was just there the other day and I was like, what had happened? Y'all got 550,000 buildings on this one street.
Yeah, it's unrecognizable at this point. Like I'm not happy there at all. So this exodus is right on time for me.
Yeah. It's funny how when you travel, things just don't stay the same. They often change a little bit quicker than they would normally change. So I know that you have a business. When you started your business in 2012, did you even think or imagine that you would be doing it as a nomad, or did you establish your business while in America thinking that you would just be running more of like a freelance business or international business?
When I first started, honestly, it was about survival. I had gotten laid off for the second time in a couple of years because corporate America was just doing weird things at that time. And I said, nobody's ever going to lay me off again. And that's how I got the determination to make this happen. Then 2013 was the first year I went to Thailand, and I was just amazed at how wonderful Asia was, and just being that far from home, like something sparked just love of being far away in me on that trip. And I remember my mom, my late mother, vividly telling me, you're going to move over there. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to live over here. And for the next 5 years, every time I came, I tried to devise a way to tell her that I didn't want to come home. And I just had this just deep ingrained fear of not being able to tell her. And I never really could until finally, like I said, in 2017, when I finally left. So it wasn't intentionally nomadic, but it turned into it once I saw more of the world, because I think I started, my first solo trip was 2006 or 2009, went to London, Paris, and Amsterdam. And that really got me fired up. I was like, okay, so I could do this international thing by myself. And it's been on and popping since then. I don't know if the kids are still saying it now, but who knows? It has been a roller coaster since then. And now that with technology and I have a clientele that I can count on to bring me business, I don't have to be home and worried about, I'm going to be the kid cover the rent. If I'm living somewhere where the rent's $500 a month, who cares? You can make that with your eyes closed. So it just depends on.
I like that, home in your heart. I think that's very interesting of a lot of people who are traveling, that they don't have necessarily a specific home that they can call home anymore. If they've given up their home, then there's people who have like that home base. But it's really about what makes you feel at home. What has been some of the biggest challenges or lessons of traveling, especially as a solo traveler and being a woman?
I'm never really fearful for my safety. I've only been to 1 or 2 places that made me concerned, like Brazil. I went to Rio once and said, I'm good on this. And I left like 5 days early. It was like a 10-day trip. It was disturbing how dangerous it was there. And I'm not easily afraid. Like, I'm not one of those people that listens to State Department warnings. And I mean to tell people not to do that. But as a seasoned traveler, sometimes you realize those things are kind of skewed based on the country and how the government feels about them. So I'm not a scary person per se. I take precautions, but I'm not scary. But that trip to Rio really put a bug in my ear into maybe I do need to be a little bit more careful, but I haven't had any other instances of fear like that. So I guess I've just been fortunate to not have to deal with that.
Yeah. So what happened in Rio that kind of like made you shift and think of traveling differently, especially as far as safety?
Yeah, I got there and hadn't been there an hour, and these two girls came stumbling in the front door of the hostel, and everybody was looking like, why are you running in here like that? She was like, we just got robbed, and we just got off the plane, and they took our everything. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So I had never actually seen someone who had just been robbed before, and they got on the phone, they were calling their parents, and they were all hysterical. Then the whole hostel went out that night. I wasn't going because they were much younger than I was at the time. Somebody got drugged and they had to drag her back. She was almost dead. It was too much going on. It was just a lot. And I couldn't believe so much stuff was happening in such a short period of time. This is like in a 2 to 3 day span. The weather was bad. I didn't do a lot of investigation about being there in March or April or whenever it was. It was like the springtime in America, but it was like winter in Brazil, because I literally just picked that country and said, I'm gonna go to Brazil for a little while, and I'll never do that again. I will never up and just go somewhere without doing some research, because every time I've done that, it has turned out poorly. So yeah, Rio, not a good look.
Yeah, so many people have good times in Rio. Hey everybody, it's Cha Jones, and I am super excited because I have a new book. Yes, a new book. It's called Reclaiming Myself. It's a 12-week journal, the self-guided self-care journal specifically for moms who are ready to prioritize themselves, own their health, happiness, and personal growth. Each week focuses on different areas of self-care with journaling prompts, self-reflection exercises, and action items tailored to help you rediscover your passions, cultivate self-love, reduce stress, and carve out time specifically for you. Reclaim the woman that you are and be the best version of yourself with the Reclaiming Myself 12-week journal. It's available on Amazon or wherever you get books. Invest in yourself, mama. You deserve it. I've looked it up, and Brazil is not a good place for me to go, period. So I just kind of stay away. But yeah, I would assume that it would be very lively. Now, after that experience, did it, when you traveled to other places, did you take some extra cautions or beyond, looking up to see about the weather and to do a little research, but did you take any precautions of how you were actually traveling to keep you safer?
Very minimal things, like keeping my wallet in my front pocket and making sure anything I had on my body was across my body. Like if I had a bag, I didn't just have it on my shoulder. I had a cross body bag, or making sure my camera was attached to me in some way so you couldn't just run from behind me and snatch it off. So little things like that I'm very cognizant of. I'm cognizant of people standing behind me on trains and buses and bumping into you or asking you to take a picture of them. And if somebody comes up behind you and takes something out of your pocket, like I'm really suspect of people in that way. It doesn't keep me from traveling, but it just makes me aware of my surroundings, which I think is a healthy thing. Whether you're traveling solo or with another person or with a group, I've heard of people getting robbed on a train. A friend of mine got robbed on a train in Sri Lanka. Like, she saw the guy that took her stuff. She knew he did it, and she couldn't catch him because he got off the train really quickly. So, she realized she had gotten bumped into and he took something from her. So, like, I'm really paranoid about tight spaces like that.
Yeah, I can imagine. So let me ask you this, just to kind of shift the gears from those type of experiences and problem safety, but to like the most magical or eye-opening moments that you have experienced, something that was inspirational or that like aha moment that you've had. Where was that, and what was that like, and why was it so magical?
So there were two places that I've been within recent history that really impacted my travel life. I went to Iran a couple of years ago, and I'd always wanted to go. I saw an episode of Rick Steves. He went to Iran and was talking about how sweet and wonderful the people were, and he was like, "You should just come if you get opportunity." And whenever I would tell people I want to go to Iran, they were like, "Why? It's so dangerous." And I was like, "I live in America. It can't be that bad. It's going to be okay." So the whole ordeal, the process of going to the embassy in D.C. and not realize I had to cover my head when I came in the door because the embassy is like property of Iran. So whatever you do in Iran, you have to do it in the embassy in America. I did not know that. So I'm scrambling trying to find a hijab to go upstairs and get the visa. And that was an ordeal. And I just remember being on the plane when we got to Turkey, everybody was just chilling. The women didn't have their heads covered. And then when the pilot says we're making our initial descent, all these head coverings started coming out. I was like, oh, this is for real. Like, it really became real to me at that time as to where I was going. And my heart was beating a million miles a minute. Just the whole process of getting off the plane. I was like, I'm an American. I'm probably the only Black American on this plane. I know I was. I was. When he saw my passport, the Border Patrol guy, he was like, oh, American. And he just looked at me and he stamped a little piece of paper because they don't stamp your passport, American passport, thank God. And off I went, found my tour guide. And so I remember, and I'll get to the next one in just a second. I remember she told me, she was like, hey, how are you? You ready to go? I said, yeah, I just need an ATM and a SIM card. She was like, oh, you can't use your debit cards here. And I was like, why? Another instance where I didn't do a lot of research because the embargo they have with Iran. So for the first 5 days, I didn't have any money because I didn't have a way of getting any cash. But if you want to talk about that, we can come back to that later. But the next one was Antarctica. Oh my God. We got on this boat, the little Zodiacs, they call them Zodiacs, the little pontoon boats. And we were out in the middle of the water and all the Zodiac drivers turned off their engines and they told us to just be quiet. And if you have never heard quiet before, I'm talking about, you could have heard a snowflake hit the ground. It was incredible. Like, that to me was the most moving experience I've ever had outside of trying to climb to Mount Everest base camp, which I didn't make because I'm fat and I couldn't breathe. But that was a whole different situation. So Iran, Antarctica, and Mount Everest have been the most life-changing experiences that I've ever had traveling.
Wow. Okay. So that's a whole lot. I don't even know what to say. Let's go back to Iran. Iran with no money. How are we doing this?
I got on the internet in a Facebook group I'm in, and I put out a bat signal. I said, y'all, I am in Iran. I cannot use my debit cards. I don't have any cash. Somebody, please help. I will PayPal somebody money who can send it to Iran, who can get it to me any kind of way. And like, everybody in the group just rallied around me. I mean, it was incredible. People were Googling stuff and they found this thing called a MahCard, MAHCARD. What happens is you can send money to PayPal to this person. They put it on a debit card, they will deliver to your hotel, and it's a tourist debit card. So I just kept sending money through PayPal to this person. Well, I had a friend in Australia who was doing it because I couldn't do it from where I was, and I paid her back. Then when I ran out of money again, you can actually go buy carpets at carpet stores, Persian rugs, and they will politely bill you for it and give you the cash in return. And so that was another way of getting money that I didn't know about. So it was quite interesting how the money situation worked over there. But I was just sick for the first few days because I literally, if it wasn't for my tour guide, I wouldn't have been able to eat. I wouldn't even be able to do anything because food wasn't included in my tour. But she, obviously she wasn't going to let me starve. But once we figured out about that MahCard, everything was great.
Like, so, okay, we buying carpets. And then when you buy the carpets, so is it like, let's say you went to the store and you were like, hey, I'm going to buy this carpet for $50, and then you ask for the additional money, or how did that work?
He asked me how much did I want to pay for it. And I said $500. And he rolled up a bill for $500. He ran my debit card for $500. The MahCard. Well, no, we did it on my debit card, but he ran the transaction as if it was in America. Because he was a vendor, he could do that. And he gave me the cash and I walked out the door. I don't have any Persian rug.
So there was no rugs involved. It was just the money exchange.
Just a money exchange. No rugs were involved.
Okay. That's different. Yeah, that's a lot. So I'm gonna keep it moving before we get into some international something else that
Oh my God.
but I'm gonna leave that. But let's talk about Antarctica just a little bit more. So, a lot of people think you can't go to Antarctica. So how did you get to Antarctica? And tell us a little bit more about the quietness and what you learned in that moment.
Okay, so you have to fly to Argentina, and most people fly into a little city at the bottom called Ushuaia. It's called the bottom of the world, basically, the end of the world, because it's the last. I think it's the southernmost point of Argentina,
South America.
So that's so that's where you get on the boat to go to Antarctica. It's a cruise ship, like a normal cruise ship you'd have in the Caribbean, except it's a little bit smaller. So it's like maybe 200 passengers and not 5,000 passengers. But the ship is made like a normal cruise ship you would see in the Caribbean, except it's just not as big. And they have these giant stabilizers under the water and these ice-breaking things on the hull for obvious reasons. And then you just get on the ship, and then the first day is pretty peaceful. I think the second and third day is when you go through the Drake Passage, and that's where the most tumultuous water in the world exists. Like, I'm talking about the hull of the ship is going up and down. The pitch is huge. Like, when we're eating, you can hear dishes in the kitchen crashing, and everybody's just laughing because they know it's a part of the process. But, you're walking down the hallway and you realize you're walking at an angle, and some people never came out of their rooms. They were so sick. Like, if you get seasick, you're going to spend 4 days in Drake's Passage, 2 going and 2 coming back. So be prepared. I don't even know if Dramamine will work for that. It was incredible. You can Google it and see the waves would come up over the windows of the dining room. Like, you could almost see under the water. It was that far. The waves were that far up on the ship. I'm not even exaggerating. The food was great. We finally got to a peaceful place after we got out of the Drake Passage. And the cruise director, he was just determined, our expedition leader, I should say, not a cruise director. He said he's going to do everything in his power to make sure we can make landings. So, they will pull into an area and they would send out a Zodiac with people on it who would check the depth of the snow and make sure there weren't any crevasses that you could fall into. And finally, we got to a place where we could actually get on land. And I was just, when I put my foot down, I was like, this is continent number 7. I'm done. Like, I have done this. And the penguins were following you around, and, they told you not to get too close to them because you don't want to give them bird flu and stuff. But they just waddled around. It was the cutest thing. And we saw whales. We saw icebergs calving. That's what it's called when they fall off, like a big sheet of ice falls off. I mean, it sounded like there was an explosion in the background. And then you turned around and looked, and then this giant ice sheets falling into the water. But they're quiet. That was something I'd never experienced before. I don't even know how you could recreate it. I think even when you're asleep, there's still noises. But it was just nothing because there's nothing there. Nothing. And the only noise was us moving around on the Zodiac. And he was like, be quiet, just sit still. And once everybody sat still, it was just nothing. And I'm not a big religious person, but if you didn't believe in God, you believed it right then, because that was amazing right there.
Wow. Yes, I just vicariously went to Antarctica with you because she not doing the boat ride.
You should do it. I swear, it's the best trip. It will be the best trip of your life,
baby. Every time,
life changing.
So I normally do this yacht thing that I have for Mother's Day every year, And I take a group of women out. We do a yacht trip, in Mexico or somewhere. And I always forget. I don't know how I forget. It's almost, I guess, like giving birth. You forget about the pain, but she forgets that she does not like the whole bobbing up and and down. It's not for me. And so 2 days of that, I die. I would just die. Like,
you can actually fly over the Drake. They do have some packages where you can fly over the Drake and meet up with the ship somewhere else. I think they'll let you land somewhere. I forget where it is, but you can fly over it.
Yeah, we gonna fly over the Drake, but we definitely want to experience that. I can only imagine how beautiful that is.
It was.
When you see movies and they go to Antarctica, you're like, oh my God. But
like we were scooping water out of the ocean and just drinking it in our hands and eating ice. The purest water you're probably gonna find anywhere on the planet.
Yeah, I can only imagine that. I would love to be able to do that. I can't even do that in a bath water these days. So dirty. And then when some days I think about that, I be like, I'm cleaning myself with this dirty ass water. But and then I have to like come back and be like, don't think about it.
Right.
Just keep it moving. So you're 50 countries in and one stamp away from being at your 51st. So you have all these passports. You've been to 7 continents. That's all continents, people. There are only 7. So do you have a geographical or cultural bucket list of places that you still are eager to explore?
Oh, Africa. It intimidates me so much. I've only been to Egypt and Tanzania, as they would correct me. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't even know how I'm going to start or where, but Africa is so intimidating to me as well. It's very hard to travel country to country. It's not like Asia where you can catch a $30 flight to Vietnam for the weekend. Like it's going to cost you $200 or $300 to fly to the next country. It's just not easy to move around on the African continent. And a lot of people use it as an excuse not to go. I'm not using it as an excuse not to go. I just know logistically it's going to take some work. And I'm like a spreadsheet type of traveler. I'm writing down everything, how much stuff costs, the link to the hotel, the confirmation numbers. I'm not a just show up and travel type of person, especially after the few incidents I've had when I tried that and it didn't turn out well. No, never again. It's going to be planned down to the minute because I don't like surprises like that.
So name a couple places that you really, really want to go to in Africa that are part of your bucket list.
Morocco, South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, and that's probably it for right now. Like I said, I've been so engulfed in trying to finish Asia, and this trip is going to finish it off for me. I would have visited every country except North Korea, unless I can find a way or get another passport. I plan on finishing every country in Asia by April of next year. So, maybe I'll finish off in South America first because I don't have very many countries left over there, and then I'll try Africa. Europe is last because I don't care about Europe at all.
Well, what you can do for the North Korea is you can go to the DMZ, and then if you're at the right place, they'll let you cross the line to say that you're in the DMZ, and then you can get a stamp. They don't stamp the actual passport. It's like the piece of paper, and you get the stamp and you put it in there. So you can do that. I did that. And then
it's closed now. The joint assembly thing, yeah, it's closed. I looked it up yesterday. So you can't do that anymore.
Oh.
I had planned on doing that. Yeah, I know. But I mean, I want to get residency somewhere else, like Mexico, somewhere it doesn't matter. And then I can use that passport to go, and I wouldn't have to worry about them deactivating my American passport. So.
Okay. I got a plan. We got a plan, y'all. Oh, all right. So if someone's listening and wants to lead a life of vacay, What advice or essential tips do you have for getting started as a remote worker, having a nomadic life, ease and comfort? What's your advice?
The first thing I would tell you is to monetize your talent. Whatever it is you're good at. I was fortunate enough to have the ability to draw and do art things. So with computers, you really don't have to be anywhere to do anything. With email and internet, there are many other careers you can have that will allow you to live that life. But the first thing I would do would be monetize my talent. Second would be to travel to these places first. Don't just show up and say, I'm going to live here, because you cannot live places. Like people talk about people from Mexico coming to America and just setting up shop. They complain about that, but then they want to go to other people's countries and set up shop. You cannot do that. You just can't do it. They're going to find you, and eventually you'll be blacklisted, and it's a terrible thing. After that, once you've been there, like for me, I know there are creature comforts that I have that I can't find other places, like chapstick. I have 22 of chapstick in my bag because I refuse to be without chapstick, and Band-Aids and certain types of deodorant, because in Asia, a lot of the deodorants and lotions have bleach in them. So you have to be mindful of that because they have melanin issues. They don't want to be brown in Asia for some reason. So I would say go a couple of times to a place that you've always wanted to visit that you think you might want to live. Join Facebook groups for that country. There's brothers and sisters of XYZ on Facebook groups, and get to know people who live there. So when you land, you're not by yourself. If that's a thing for you, I don't really care if I know somebody or not, but for some people, it's comforting to know that, hey, there's somebody there. If I need to call somebody, something pops off, I want to be hang around some people for a Friday or Saturday night. I know a couple of people there. And honestly, I didn't save up before I moved to Thailand. I just left. I sold all my stuff. I had a little bit of money, but some people will encourage you to save for 6 months or prepare for 6 months of living. And I think that's more important if you don't have a job getting there and you have to establish yourself. But for me, I work as I go. I make money as I go. So I don't have anything saved up. I'm just being brutally honest. I don't have money saved up to do this trip. I am earning it as I'm going. I don't encourage that or recommend it, but that's what works for me, is I earn as I go. So that way, as long as I keep going, as long as I keep earning, I can keep the trip going. So monetize your talent, investigate where you want to live, meet a few people, and make sure you got a job and a work permit when you're ready to go to that place.
Well, there are so many more questions that I would love to ask you, and for the sake of time, I'm going to cut it. But thank you so much, Adrianne, for taking the time to be on my show. Is there anything that you want to add or leave the listeners? Drop your handles. How can they contact you? Where's your website? All that great stuff.
Yeah, my Instagram is BlackEyeSees, BlackEyeSees. That's where all my travels are on IG. And just do it. Don't be afraid. Like, if you can survive in America, you can survive anywhere else in the world. I promise you. You'll be all right. And that'd be the last thing I need to say to your listeners.
Well, thank you again for speaking to us today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, that was another episode of Life's a Vacay podcast. I'm your host, Cha Jones. If you like the show, please subscribe, share, and or donate to help keep this thing going. Until next time, remember always to find time to live and express your freedom. We're out. You have been listening to Life's a Vacay podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. Every day you have a choice, so choose yourself and never allow your circumstances to dictate the life you live. Whatever you don't like, you can change. Remember, nothing happens overnight, but know that when you set goals and take inspired action, whatever you desire can come in perfect timing. Never give up on creating the life you deserve. Don't anticipate your next vacation when you could be living a whole life on vacation. Until next time, I'm your host, Cha Jones. Please remember to like and share this podcast so that others can be inspired. Peace. You have been listening to Life's a Vacay podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. Every day you have a choice, so choose yourself and never allow your circumstances to dictate the life you live. Whatever you don't like, you can change. Remember, nothing happens overnight, but know that when you set goals and take inspired action, whatever you desire can come in perfect timing. Never give up on creating the life you deserve. Don't anticipate your next vacation when you could be living a whole life on vacation. Until next time, I'm your host, Cha Jones. Please remember to like and share this podcast so that others can be inspired. Peace.